Good afternoon. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. We got several people on Zoom already. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And the facilitator is not here today, so I'm just going to introduce, say your name, just say it. Cynthia. See, not good for me to say, not good for me to say. But she's going to be here. She's the poet, and this is African Art of Africa. And she's a poet, and she's going to talk to us today and tell us a little bit of background. You okay?
I'm a poet and I know it.
There you go.
Good afternoon and welcome, and thank you for coming out. It is truly an honor to be here at Oak Hammocks. I've been here a couple of times for art exhibitions. I have some lovely artist friends in the city, and they've exhibited here. But today I have the pleasure of being here to share with you about African spoken word poetry. And I am here on behalf of Dr. Kole Odutola, and I had the pleasure of meeting him at several Art Speaks events sponsored by Poet Laureate E. Stanley. And you meet a poet, you share poetry, you become poet friends. And he asked if I would be willing to speak to you today on his behalf. He is traveling in South Africa. He frequently travels there. He has a wonderful exhibit at the University of Florida in their Student Union building with photos and poems from his travels. If you have an opportunity to go there, check it out. My name is Cynthia Portalatin, also known in artist circles as Cynthia Rose. I've been writing since I was 7 when my grandmother gifted me a pocket diary. And I was supposed to last a year, and I filled it up in a couple of months, sort of like a scribe. I majored in journalism, got my undergrad a long time ago. And now I am currently pursuing a Master of Arts in Medicine at the University of Florida. I decided to pivot in my career as a federal public relations specialist with the Department of Agriculture. But I've been writing poetry for a long time, since my teens, and have published 2 books. I won't get into them right now, but if you're interested, they are on the table up front. And I've also brought some copies of Dr. Kole's collection of poems, Tales of a Lagos Boy Abroad, and there are copies as well at the front. And now, are we ready? Are y'all ready to hear about spoken word? All right, let's get into it. So, before we define spoken word, what is poetry? Akin Kuluwola Bale, he defines poetry as the oldest of 3 major forms of literature. And these traditions ran throughout the ages. It has manifested in most human form. And in spite of it being around for a long time, it has changed in forms depending on the ages. I'm having a hard time reading from this distance. I wonder if I could read from there. I think it's the font size. So when you get to be around my age, I'm in my late 50s, the vision gets a little blurry. I had a printout and I left it in the car in my excitement to get here. Thank you, Mohini. Did I say it right? Thank you, Mohini. All right, here we go. Okay. So where were we? We were talking about the definition of poetry before we get into spoken word. So Bello defines poetry as the oldest of 3 major forms of literature that has been a part of tradition of man throughout the ages. It has manifested in most human ritual activities, as well as served as a ready means of entertainment in traditional festivals. Yet, despite its long history and perennial occurrence and employment in important human activities, it has been almost impossible to arrive at a common definition because it seems to strike different people differently. In essence, Professor Remy Raji says poetry is geometry of literature, meaning you need to work it out. There are different types of poetry as well. Alaga and Kiraribi define poetry as spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, which rendered or written with short, consciously selected words or phrases that best capture the mind of both the reader-writer and the audience or reader. They further stated that poetry can also be referred to as a comparative name given to any form of written or spoken word, which is rendered with a melodious sound or chanted. So interestingly enough, in my research as a student in arts and medicine, I learned about ancient goddesses and priests dating back to 2000 BC, and they used poetry. They didn't call it poetry, they called it songs, but they were poems, and they were used in healing practices as far back as 2000 BC. There are other perspectives that we shall list. One is the utilitarian and communal view. Many African scholars view poetry not as an isolated art form, but as a functional part of community. It is a tool for social cohesion, education, and even political commentary. Professor Ojaidi noted that among Africans, poetry and art have always been utilitarian. This perspective suggests the value of a poem is often tied to its ability to serve as a purpose for the community, whether it's to praise a leader, mourn the dead, or critique social injustice. This stands in contrast to the Western notion of art for art's sake. Although I will add in there that right now artists are speaking in volumes, and often in times of social or political unrest is when the artist's voice gets louder, and we always speak our truth as artists, so it's so important. Mary Oliver agrees with Chinua Ojaide. Poems are not words, she says. After all, but fires for the cold, ropes let down to the lost, as necessary as bread in the pockets of the hungry. She argues that poetry serves as a fundamental human need, a need for comfort, guidance, and sustenance that is just as vital as physical food. She uses a series of powerful comparisons to elevate the function of a poem beyond simple language. And I love her poetry. She talks often of nature, and that is one of my favorite forms of self-care, taking walks in nature. A look at Wordsworth and Oshundare. Professor Oshundare, a poet and literary critic, has a definition of poetry that is rooted in the Yoruba metaphysics of the word oro. For him, words are not just sounds, but sacred, sovereign objects that have a life and power of their own. His definition of poetry as a man meaning to man is a reformulation of Wordsworth's, but with a crucial emphasis on speaking rather than just writing. acknowledging the primacy of the oral. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word became a story. A central theme in African scholarship of poetry is the link between the written form and the long-standing oral tradition. The definition of poetry in Africa is often intertwined with its performance. And we now take a moment to sample the mixture of voices.
In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word. God was the Word. Benny. And the Word lived amongst men, and they knew him not. Benny. We are the spoken, the broken, the token, the Word that never ends. We are the Word, are the words ever spoken. Wanumio, 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 Wanumio. Make me your abode, the Word. The very moment of pain, words left our world and we were silent. At the very moment when we thought we would gain, words left the band of our oppressors, and lashes of Cain were all we got. We sang and invoked the Spirit to take us over. It was then the new song was born, that we shall overcome.
So that is an example of spoken word, African spoken word, the oral tradition and performance. A central theme in African scholarship of poetry is the link between the written form and the long-standing oral tradition. And I know we saw this slide last, but I wanted to revisit. I know you couldn't understand everything that was said because part of it was sung in an African tongue, but this is an example of an African poem. There we go. What is the history of African spoken word? Let's talk about its ancient roots and its oral tradition. Griots and praise singers in West Africa, they are considered the oral historians, and they served as the keepers of memory, blending history, poetry, and music together. They perform genealogies, proverbs, and political commentary. Yoruba praise singers, and Yoruba is an ancient African religion. So their praise singers, also known as Apala, Iwi Oriki, and Hausa court poets, did similar work. And then we also have proverbs and folk tales, concise metaphorical sayings such as Akan, Igbo, Swahili traditions. They carry moral and philosophical lessons, much like in our Bible, American Bible, where we have in the Christian religion the book of Proverbs. This is a comparison, very similar. Storytelling accompanied by drums, call and response and song is a performance art. There is a spiritual dimension to spoken words history. It's very spiritual and religious and orature. Ritual chants, incantations, and liturgical recitations, such as Yoruba Ifa divination poetry, Zulu praise poetry, which is in praise of kings, and Somali Gabe. These are fused with aesthetics, meaning the robes that they wear, and with spirituality. And those are religious practices that they carry out. The photos here are part of the Yoruba Ifa divination poetry ceremonies in Africa. It's connected here. How is it connected in the US? Well, if you think back to the early 20th century and the Harlem Renaissance that came about in New York City, we can bring to memory such poets as Langston Hughes, who incidentally, he was born in 1902 and died in 1967, just 1 year before I was born. And I'm like, he's one of my favorite poets, but I will never meet him other than through his books. And yet he left such a rich collection of poetry and wrote 2 autobiographies. So I was reading him again today, and it's really inspiring to be able to connect to someone who lived a century almost before me. But he is one of the greats from the Harlem Renaissance. And we also have Claude McKay, Jesse Redmond Fosse, and Sterling Brown. These poets infuse poetry with speech rhythms, jazz cadences, and vernacular. And there was also jazz poetry in the 1920s through the 1940s. Another great poet from the Harlem Renaissance period in the early 20th century is James Weldon Johnson, and he's one of the most important poets. He's considered to be from that period of time. He played a pivotal role in shaping the literary landscape of the early 20th century. His work often explored themes of racial identity and pride, helping to give voice to the African American experience. One of his most famous poems, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Y'all know that song, right? Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. I won't sing the whole song because that's not what I'm here to do, but if you weren't familiar with it, that's what it sounds like. This would become the anthem for the civil rights movement throughout his career. He sought to promote understanding and acceptance between the races. Okay, so let's get into spoken word on the African continent. We're going back to Africa. Some of the advantages of spoken word poetry in the early days: a performer drew the energy from the presence of the audience. And that's why I keep looking up at y'all, because I get my energy from you. I don't consider myself a spoken word poet, but I do memorize my poems, and I do perform poetry at poetry readings, open mics, and things like that. But maybe I'll get into that. It can be pretty cutthroat when you're doing poetry slams and you're battling. And I don't like to fight. I only fight if I'm advocating for someone who needs help. But the energy from the audience gives us confidence and encourages us to share our voice, because you, the audience, you validate the poet's perspective with snaps, claps, or yay, or sometimes other words of encouragement. But you empower poets to speak their truth and develop a strong, authentic voice, because the audience will also let you know if you don't sound right, they're going to let you know. Hearing this honest and vulnerable personal stories, this creates a strong bond between the poet and the audience, and it exposes listeners to diverse experiences, promoting empathy and reminding us all that we are not alone in our struggles. Accessibility and inclusivity. As an art form, spoken word is inherently democratic and accessible. Unlike many other literary forms, it requires no formal training, although you can have it. You can go to school, you can major in it, but you don't have to in order to do it. And it doesn't require expensive equipment. It's wonderful to have this mic, but as a spoken word artist, you are projecting your voice. You are performing. You're relying on your voice and your story. And these events often take place at community-driven open mics and poetry slams. So they're easily accessible. Most of the time, these events are free. And then there is the social commentary part. Spoken word is a highly effective medium for social commentary and activism. Its direct, passionate delivery can bypass traditional barriers. It makes the complex issues more relatable, and it inspires further action and conversation. Now, the question we ask is, does this entertainment lead to engagement? And personally, for me, it goes beyond entertainment, and it definitely leads to engagement. It is a vibrant, dynamic art form, and it combines literary merit with theatrical flair, making it uniquely engaging when compared to a solitary reading of a poem. I could stand here and read to you from one of my books and just read normal without any emphasis on particular words. Or I could stand here and share a poem from my heart that I've memorized, and I can give it a little theatrical flair, well, some of my theatric background, which helps me project and emote, and you'll connect with it in a very different way. And that is the difference also between simply reading a poem, where you don't know, if you've never heard that poet speak, you don't know which words to flex or which words carry a certain tone. But when you hear it, it's a totally different experience. We come to another, if I can get my pointer. Okay, here we go. So let us listen to Titi Sonuga's poem, You Are Welcome Here. And she is Edmonton's 9th Poet Laureate. And I think you'll enjoy listening to her. And she's speaking in English, so you'll close your eyes to really take it in.
Announcing itself in radiant color. I come to know this city, just as I come to know my own body, blooming in an apartment on White Avenue, my tongue curling around the word home. In a junior high in McKernan, where a teacher first said, write, and I sat with a pen, a girl, watched the years gather on the page and stood with a blade, a woman, knowing how an artist makes a tool of what could otherwise be a weapon. This is what the first makers knew, before this place was even an idea, how to carve with as much tenderness as strength, how to create something warm enough to gather round. Watch the flames illuminate the faces of those who can only bear witness, those who let the tears pool shamelessly in their laps and say, tell me another story. And they did, calling time mercifully to a halt. Bless the stories that transport and transform on Boyle Street, on Jasper Avenue. Bless the music we make in Millwoods, in Castle Downs, in Ritchie, where the instrument asks and the dancer's body answers. In Bonnie Doon, a painter is pulling stories from their head, and everything they know of beauty is what the heart tells the eye, and it does not lie. Bless the open door art makes of all of us. In our art walk, the way our downtown sparks, in our heritage and folk, our Kerry West and blues, in all the ways the artists at the fringe claim their center. Festival is just another way we say you are welcome here. When I arrived in this city, summer giving way to fall, someone was already building something, so that when I pulled the smallest question from the nesting doll of my 13-year-old body, asking the same thing in new ways until a life-saving truth emerged. Can I be here? Can I be something here? Can I be something beautiful here? Someone was always there to answer.
Reminds me of my 13-year-old self, and I grew up moving around a lot. My parents weren't in the military. I like to think they just had gypsy blood because we were always moving. And so it was very hard to find my identity if I kept having to be dropped in a new place, new school, meet new people. And writing helped me. I was very shy as a child. You wouldn't know it now, but I was. And the paper doesn't judge you. And it does allow you to look back and reflect and grow. Now that we have listened, let's put this to the test. And I hope you were paying attention. You didn't know there was going to be a test, did you? This is where the call and response portion of the program comes in. What do you remember from the poem? Anyone? Nesting doll of my 13-year-old self. What does that mean to you? How did it make you feel to hear it? Can y'all hear her? Okay. Keep going, yes. Yes, we do, right? Even if we're still forming our own identities at that time, because we're quite young at 13, we're still layered and complex, trying to figure it out. That's good. Thank you for sharing. How did it make you feel? Did you feel reminiscent? Did you feel good or longing? Or did it make you feel any special way?
Reminiscent, warm.
Good feelings.
Good feelings.
Awesome. Yes. Would anyone else like to share what they remembered from the poem? A line that may have stood out to you? Okay. Well, thank you, ma'am, for sharing your perspective. Now we have time for open mic. Do we have any poets in the house? Don't everybody jump up at once. But I'm prepared. I always come prepared like the Girl Scout. And since we don't have any volunteers, what I will do at this time, I would like, if you'll humor me, to play one of my poems on video, and it's titled Living. And after that plays, I will connect with Dr. Cole, who put together this wonderful presentation, and he is an expert on African spoken word, so that if you have any questions and would like to talk with him, you can. He's currently in South Africa, but he did say he would be willing to connect with us. But we'll play this poem first. Living.
Living should be free and easy, our laughter light and breezy. Taking care to feed the soul with love, essential to the whole. The whole meaning all of you, but he and she and they too. For joy shared is reflected again in the laughter shared with a friend.
Anybody want to share how that one made you feel? Oh, yay. Thank you for sharing.
I like the part that said taking care to feed the soul. That's something that speaks to me a lot.
Absolutely. Taking care to feed the soul is so important. We have so many voices coming at us. Television, radio, news, people. It's important to listen to your own soul. Hi, Dr. Cole. Are you with us? Perfect. So we're at the point where there's questions, and I'm going to put you on speaker. Does anyone have a question? Yes, sir. One moment. He's going to ask. We have someone in the audience who has a question for you. And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation as well. And thanks, Cynthia, for reading it and expressing it and helping us to understand it. I was in West Africa for several years and appreciated the griots
Can you hear
that I
me?
met there.
1 second. Hello. Oh, this is, I apologize.
No
Sometimes
problem.
this happens. Can you hear this person's question from the audience? Are you able to hear?
No, repeat it so I can hear you. Repeat the
Okay.
question.
Repeat it. Okay. I'm going to walk toward him and then hear it better.
Yeah,
Okay.
just give me
Here we go. We're ready.
Okay.
We're ready for the question.
So the question is, what is the role of a poet or a spoken word artist in African society, and how is that different in American society?
Did you catch that? Okay.
Yes, I got the question. This is a very, very important question because right here in Durban, in South Africa, we'll all be talking about poetry. And we went to the extent of saying that, the name poet in the Western world is different from the name we give them. Poets, we give them in Senegal. In Nigeria, we call them Akewi, meaning that they're chanters. But the truth is that, yes, we all have to, when we translate, we all have to come under the same category of poets. The Yoruba poets, for instance, they are
Hello?
about the past. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
We lost you after
Hello?
it went in, it faded out after Yoruba.
Okay, all right. So what I'm saying is that in Yoruba, the poets are called Kewi. They are chanters. They are people who are the custodians of the history of a people. And sometimes people tend to say they are court jesters because they also remind the king of kings who did terrible things in the past. And we always say the king who turned the city into a forest will never be forgotten. And the king that turned the forest into a city will also never be forgotten. Right? So they're supposed to be, they don't just entertain, but they also, at the same time, educate the people. So that's what the poets in the Yoruba tradition, what they do. Now, how is it different from American poets? American poets have always been the voices of voices. They tend to put words in sophisticated and elevated way so that people can listen to them. And they're known to be people of integrity, people who are not, well, for want of a better word, ordinary. They tend to live their life a little above board. Yes, that's what it is.
Well,
So
that's a
that would be my
difference.
answer to that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you, Dr. Cole. Great comparison.
Is there
Anyone
another
else have a question?
You got a question?
We have another question. One moment.
Hello. I'd like to ask, as a young girl, did you spend any time in Haiti?
He's a man.
What?
As a young man,
As a young man
yes. Did you spend any time in Haiti?
in Haiti, I visited Haiti for about 2 weeks with a few Americans. I'm from Ireland, and we purchased some beautiful artwork that was not typical of Haitian artists at the time. And I wonder, has Haiti recovered after the hurricanes and the terrible unrest? I was there at the time of Baby Doc.
Did you catch that, Dr. Cole? She was in Haiti.
To Haiti that I am.
Yes. Have you been to Haiti?
Have a good.
I have not. I have not been to Haiti, but have you, Dr. Cole?
No, I have never been to Haiti.
No.
I've not been to Haiti.
From what I understand from the news, I have been following the civil unrest. Admittedly, I don't watch the news every day because it's depressing, but there's still turmoil there. Yeah. Thank you for your question. The culture is beautiful and so is their art. Any other questions?
Mahini, is there anything online, Mahini?
Any on the chat? No?
No? Okay.
Well, I have one question for you, Dr. Cole. This is Cynthia. Tell us, you are in South Africa and I've always wanted to visit. What have you enjoyed the most in terms, if you've had an opportunity to see any art or hear any poetry, what has been your favorite experience now or even in the past? I know you have experienced art there in the past. Would you be so kind as to share what your favorite experience in South Africa has been to date?
So because right now I'm in a place called Durban, and I took a plane from Johannesburg, to Durban. The whole trip from Florida to Durban took me 30 hours. Okay, that aside.
Wow.
What have I really enjoyed more? These are fantastic poets. They don't just read in English, they read in their local dialects, which I don't understand. But the passion with which they read, even the primary students today were reading stuff, they understand what's happening in their society, and we're looking at the poets in relation to the society. The title of the festival here, Poetry Africa Festival, and I would encourage as many people in the audience that can take time in October to visit Durban during the Poetry Festival, Poetry Africa Festival. It's going to happen next year again, and it will be the 30th edition of this festival. It's a place in which you are amazed at others, what they do, and the talent, the raw talent, and the passion by which. So I have been around, but a place museum today about Lutuli was one of the freedom fighters here. He was also a Nobel Prize winner. We were at his house, a museum, and we also engaged students from school that won the first prize in schools that had coding. A school in South Africa came first. And we met them, we interacted with them. They read poems about coding, how it's fun and that. But before then, we also went to the Durban University of Technology, where we were able to interact with young girls and their teachers. And you need to be there and see the interest had questions they asked and all of that. So it's I can't say enough of it. I can't say enough of my experience. To be fair, it's amazing. It's something that I don't do when I'm in Gainesville. You know, you just walk up to the 11th floor and this buffet of breakfast spread for you. And then you come in the evening, there's food. It's just, I'm a foodie and I love to eat. And these people are feeding me. By the time I come back, I'll be probably twice my size. Well, that's it for now.
Yeah.
Cynthia, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing about your current experiences. And it's great that you're meeting the youth and your peers and the elders. And it sounds like a wonderful experience, both culinary and poetic. Well, 30 hours, that is a long journey. We wish you safe travels back upon your return and while you're there. And thanks for connecting with us here in Florida. And thank you for the opportunity to share on your behalf. I'm going to hang up. Oh, okay.
We wish you a nice event, but he's going to do it in Zulu. So listen to how Zulu sounds. Okay. Please wish the seniors and the elderly people who have come to a poetry event in Gainesville. Please wish them a good time in Zulu.
Sanibonani silifisela konke okuhle engathi nje umcimbi wenu ungahamba kahle kube kuhle konke. Siyabonga kakhulu.
Did you get that?
Beautiful. Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you. What a treat. Thank you, Dr. Cole. Take care.
I want to run back in.
Okay.
The event is happening. I just came out. Take your call.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye. The beautiful wonderfulness when technology works, it's really wonderful to be able to talk, 7-hour time difference and be able to share. And this is through the WhatsApp app, which I used to have on my phone like 3 or 4 years ago when I worked for at Florida A&M University in their international agriculture programs. And often we would work in other countries, such as in Africa, in Ghana, India, even in the Dominican Republic, teaching sustainable agriculture. And my role was connecting and recruiting scientists, professors, agricultural specialists, and coordinating these calls across time zones and making sure that all of the logistics were right for them to travel. They would donate their time and we would pay for their travel. So I had to have WhatsApp. It was critical. And then I deleted the app when I moved on to a new job because people were calling me that I didn't know. But for Dr. Cole, I was like, okay, I will do this for you. I will download it and I might delete it afterward, but it's a wonderful app. Gosh, the time has almost come to a close and I don't want to end because I love sharing poetry. Would you all like to hear me recite one of my poems? Okay, great. I was hoping you would say yes. First, I want to read you one. I was just going to recite one. It's one of my favorites. I perform it all the time, but I have a very short one, which sometimes I mix up the lines because it gets me a little emotional in a good way. So I'm going to read you that one first. It's from my first book that I ever published back in 2013. Now, mind you, I've been writing since I was a teenager, but I never published until my 40s, a book, that is. I would send things to the newspaper and they would print my poems, but I don't even think my parents knew that I was, that my stuff was printed elsewhere. It was deeply personal, and I didn't want people to know what was going on with me. And then I joined a writing group in Tallahassee when I moved there. And I finally found my people, Well, other people were as weird as me. I'm the only poet that I knew of in my family growing up. But come to find out years later, only like 10 years ago, through connecting with a maternal cousin, that there are doctors, artists, poets, ministers, lots of teachers in my ancestral history on my maternal side. But I was adopted and I lost my parents when I was very young, so I didn't have knowledge of that, but it's in me. And so even though I felt like the ugly duckling because I was different in the surroundings where I grew up, I had found my people when I joined a writing group in Tallahassee. And after 2 years, I felt safe enough that I could, and encouraged enough that I could put my poetry out there. Never thinking that I would be here today speaking and be traveling all over the country speaking and sharing poetry. All I really wanted was just to have them in one book so that when the good Lord takes me away, my daughter wouldn't have to hunt and wonder what all these scraps of paper, because I would write on anything, a napkin, a Post-it note, a notebook, a pretty journal, a typewriter back in the day. So this book is titled Bloom Forever, and it literally is a poetry journal, and you can see the evolution of type, handwritten, typed poems, non-electric to electric to word processor to computer, desktop publishing, and all my scribbles. And my publisher hated me because I would not type them over. I refused. I'm also a copy editor, and I knew if I did that, I would want to change and correct things. And I said, nope, I want them just as I wrote them. So they go back. They begin from my late teens all the way into my mid 40s. And some things, sadly, in the world have not changed. Gosh, I may have to share 3 poems. Can I share 3 poems? Do we have time? I want to respect your time. Okay, great. There was one that I wrote when I was in college, and I was editor of the school paper at that time. I studied undergrad at Southern A&M University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I used to send them comics and poems and letters to the editor. I'm weird. I would wake up with essays in my head and I would write them, and I would just send them and they would print them. And then one of my professors, oh, and by the way, I was not majoring in journalism at the time. My first love was theater and fashion design, but I hadn't yet gotten into any of those classes. You start and they make you take math and science all over again. But I took an elective on African American literature, and my professor, I guess she saw something in me, and this is why teachers are so important. And she asked me what I was majoring in, and I told her, and she's like, really? I would have thought you were majoring in English or something. You write really well. I was like, oh, thank you. No one had ever told me that. And she said, well, you might want to like talk to the newspaper, the college paper, and see if they'll print something. She didn't know it, that I was already having things printed, but I made the connection and I went over there and I asked them if they wanted a writer on staff, if they needed a writer. It was unpaid. And they said, oh yeah, we could use a feature writer. And my first interview was the dean of the College of the Arts and Humanities. And I interviewed him. And from then on, I never looked back, and so moving forward to when I was editor-in-chief, we call it the AP wire. We had a special printer, and this is before the age of modern computing. We were in the MS-DOS phase where you have the black screen and like the orange or neon green lettering. There was no such thing as desktop publishing. There was no such thing as internet as we know it. The government probably already had it, but none of us out here in the world had it. But we had the wire, we called the AP wire, and it would print out news from all around the world. And as editor, I could pick and choose what I wanted to include in our weekly newspaper alongside our local news in the community and on campus. And there was a story that I saw that hit me so hard. It was as if I had been punched in the chest. And every time I think of it, I'm trying to find it so I can read the poem that it inspired. Every time I think of it, I want to cry because it's still happening today. And I titled it Sarajevo, Yugoslavia. Flee the bloodshed. Welcome not the pain. Even though out of my family, only one remains. A refugee in danger of becoming insane, I peep through the bars that keep me from the rain. I am but a child. I barely understand this war that goes on between the brotherhood of man. I dedicate this poem to a boy from Sarajevo, also known as Yugoslavia, who I saw in that AP Wire news story. There was a photograph. They used to print in dots back then, and you could see black and white. It was grainy, but he was sitting in a cage on the back of a truck. He was a prisoner of war, and he was an orphan. I wrote this poem in 1992. So let's bring it back to a little closer to our time. This poem is titled Love Must Win, written in 2012. Words bristle and emotions flare, hearts aching to know we care. Fear of rejection, unknown needs, pain flows in and out despite our deeds. Bruised, bleeding, past hurts unhealed. Praying, crying, I quietly kneeled. Love must win. Love must fight. Love will always conquer the night. That's the last poem in this book, written, some 20 years or more after. The final poem I would like to share with you, I wrote in 2020 when the world had shut down. It is the title poem for the book of Journey's Light. And my fiance and I collaborated. He's a photographer, so he put images to my poetry. And this one's a rainbow, but he's traveled all over the world. And we looked for poems that would be images that would be symbolic and match the poetry. And it was a gift to the world because it's really expensive to publish a hardcover this size with full color. But I had a vision. I was like, we got to go all the way or not do it. And I just love how this is a church steeple with the sun shining down. And there are positive affirmations and inspiring and divine poetry in this book. And every poem that was written, I was out in nature or communing with God and waiting for that download. This is one of my favorites. This photo was taken right at sunrise in Panacea, Florida. So that was a very fun time. We'd get up and drive all over the place to catch the images that he didn't already have. So I present to you Journey's Light. The journey is light, so mustn't hold tight. Be free and embrace with ease that in which we delight. All will circle toward where it once began, as life reveals the beauty in what is unplanned. Storms may brew and houses may fall, but love builds a fortress that will always stand tall. Want not for comfort, vanity, shells crushed. Shelter each other with mutual trust. Thank you.
Thank you so much for presenting today. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And a big thanks goes to Dr. Cole for allowing me to share. And I'll hang around for a little bit if you want to talk, off camera, or ask me questions or check out the books. Thank you so much.